morning and welcome to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting on Wednesday, the 10th of July. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we could have roll call, please, Brett.
Commissioner Brown, Shillette,
Present.
Pickens, Smith,
Present.
Velasquez, present. Vice Chairman Fuller,
Present.
Chairman Vieira.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And I'd like to bring forward Assistant Pastor John Guy from the Lancaster Baptist Church for our invocation.
Let's pray together. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day that you've given to us. We thank you for our city and for those who help to lead us and keep this city the wonderful city that it is. We pray for your blessing upon this meeting. I pray that you would be glorified through all that takes place here and in our city. And we'll thank you for what you do. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And if at this time you could please stay standing and join me in saluting our flag, right hand over your heart, and begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have two presentations this morning, and we'll start off with the presentation from the Antelope Valley Alcohol Prevention Coalition. Mr. Jermaine Lewis, if you could. He's the program's operations supervisor with this organization and also a proud AV High School alumni, so welcome back, Jermaine.
Sir, yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
And UCLA Bruin alumni as well.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody. I'd just like to thank you guys for this opportunity to come and speak on behalf of the Antelope Valley Alcohol Prevention Coalition. What we wanted to do is today is come here and share our views and goals and the work that we've been doing over this past 2 years, and hopefully build a better collaboration with the city of Lancaster. Now, the mission for the Antelope Valley Alcohol Prevention Coalition is to prevent and reduce underage drinkers in that age group of 12 to 20. To give you a little brief background of how this coalition was formed, I'm an employee of Tarzana Treatment Centers. That's where I am a operations supervisor for the prevention programs, environmental prevention programs, which is does their work solely in the community type work. We have been contracted by the Public Health Department, Substance Abuse Prevention and Control. We are one of two providers in the Antelope Valley that are contracted with Substance Abuse Prevention and Control. We work on an environmental piece, and in 2012, we conducted a six-month needs assessment in the Antelope Valley, specifically in the city of Lancaster. Over those 6 months, we collected and reviewed and analyzed data such as school surveys, arrests, conviction data, and alcohol sales to minors. We have been collaborating with Alcohol Beverage and Control as well, and during that time with Alcohol Beverage and Control, we collected community-specific information as far as environmental scans and other type of interviews, such as key informant interviews as well. In regards to that data in 2012, we found some alarming numbers, some staggering numbers, some alarming rates of alcohol use amongst the age group of 12 for youth, 12 to 18, and underage drinkers 18 to 20. Overall, the work, excuse me, I'm a little nervous, I'm sorry guys. Some percentages of that data that we collected, we administered over 300 surveys in the community. 100 of those were with that specific age group, 12 to 18, and another 100 was 18 to 24. 86% of the youth for the first surveys reported that 86% have reported, they get their alcohol from parties, local parties in the area. 80% of the young adults in that group reported getting alcohol from those parties. 70% of the youth said alcohol is probably the most easily accessible drug out here in the Antelope Valley, and 97% of the young adults said alcohol would probably be the most easily accessible drug, or not drug, but easily accessible. Is somewhat easily accessible for underage drinkers to get. Our main objective, what we found out since those numbers were alarming, it kind of pointed towards social hosting. A lot of these kids are reporting getting it from adults. Adults are still buying it from outside the retailers, and kids are still accessing it in the home. Given the community that we live in, a lot of the parents do commute out of the area for their employment, so kids are left home alone. On the other hand, there are parents that are still in here, still furnishing alcohol to minors. The biggest obstacle we see is at the parties, that this is still going on. So what we want to do as the coalition that was formed, that is made up of a number of community stakeholders, is to decrease those rates of social access to underage youth getting alcohol. So what we're focusing on as a coalition, and what we're focusing on as a coalition is to implement new strategies in the area, in the city of Lancaster, such as community awareness campaigns, work with the Sheriff's Department, and assist them on party patrols, and ultimately, if needed, seen by the city, create a local social host ordinance. With our research, within our research, the state of California does not have a criminal penalty for a social host ordinance, and that is a state. It's more on a civil level. And during our research as well, the city of Lancaster does not have a social host ordinance at a local level. What we're hoping to, a social host ordinance is a law that will hold hosts of parties or gatherings, public gatherings, not at restaurants and places of business, responsible for providing places and locations for underage drinking. So we feel that a social host ordinance at a local level will give not only the city a tool and the community another tool to prevent underage drinking, it also provide another tool for the Sheriff's Department to fight the underage drinking as well, as far as going into the parties, those such arenas. During the research as well, we found out that 3 Southern California cities have adapted a local social host ordinance. The city of Thousand Oaks in 2006, city of Santa Barbara, and Laguna Hills. Actually, there are 9 Ventura, all 10 Ventura County cities where Thousand Oaks is, have adapted some form of the social host laws that enforces penalties at a local level. In Thousand Oaks in 2010, 94 citations were issued since the rule went into effect, generating $124,546 in revenue for the city. And the police department last year billed $40,000 in fines, and $30,000 was received. We're just saying what we want to do is work with the city. We want to work with the lawmakers, and hope that you can be a part of this coalition, and further guide us and give us this arena, our forum right now that we're in, to speak on more of our work going forward. I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from the commission?
Thank you for coming forward today. Appreciate it. You mentioned a few cities that have already instituted these social host ordinances. At face value, it seems like it's a really good idea, but if there aren't more, what are the typical objections that are found in instituting that type of an ordinance?
Since you have to vote, I guess the objections is there is a civil code at the state level that enforces that, so I don't really see any objections coming from the community. Actually, during our surveying of the community, we did survey adults as well, and they were, let's see, I would say it was over about 80% of those surveys were in support of a local social host law. So to really answer your question, I guess I really couldn't really provide an adequate answer to the objections that happen.
Okay, so unaware of objections at this point.
So I'm unaware.
You had mentioned the benefits from a revenue perspective for a city of enacting this type of an ordinance. What has been found in terms of reduction of underage drinking, if any?
Let's see. Well, we do have a high frequency of parties out here in the Antelope Valley, which is stated, from the data that we have. Thousand Oaks, for example, is probably the prime city that we base this on. Since 2006, when they adapted their law, their nuisance and abatement, I believe that was called, as far as noise complaints with the parties, all that went down. There was less reports of that. Crime rate went down at these parties, and citations for underage drinking went down as well for these parents. And then other restrictions came about as far as community-type events, but,
You'd also mentioned support of and working with the Sheriff's Department in terms of party enforcement. And I know that the Sheriff's Department here has a pretty aggressive program with parties. I can't remember the name. It's like the Party Bus or whatever the name of your program is, Captain Nelson. But I just read in the newspaper, in fact, about a pretty significant arrest or raid that was made on a rave party that prevented that from happening, that would have most likely resulted in a lot of underage drinking, perhaps injuries or fatalities. I don't know if you'd like to comment on what it is that you're doing and how it relates to their program, and how a social ordinance that may or may not benefit you in your enforcement actions.
The ordinance of the type that suggested.
I don't think we've got the microphone.
I think that would provide another tool that may be useful for enforcement, especially for the party cars that are assigned. The rave incident that occurred actually came to our attention as a result of our headquarters social media unit, and we were able to pinpoint the location of a planned party that was to include several hundred partygoers, and in past incidents, they've left wherever it is that they've chosen to party a shambles. They've had illegal nitrous oxide or NOS, alcohol, and a variety of illicit drugs that have been used and sold and traded at these events. So obviously there's a danger to public safety as well when those participants decide to leave the area. And obviously, we've also noted that there was some fire danger related to the bonfires that almost always seem to accompany these types of gatherings. So fortunately, we were able to redirect some of the resources of the ABCFI and to directly interdict the largest of the two planned get-togethers. Ultimately, they moved their location to another county, and we were able to provide that information to that county as well, and that party ultimately was shut down. without any loss of life, fortunately. During the course of the evening, a second smaller rave incident was uncovered, and on the extreme east side of our area, almost to the San Bernardino County line, and that was another one that we were able to successfully interdict. We ended up making perhaps, I think, half a dozen arrests in that second incident. And again, fortunately, no loss of life and no major accidents or incidents as a result of it. But the tool that he's referenced here, I think, would be, again, one more tool in the toolbox. I don't know how often it would be used, with the exception of probably the party cars, where we've actually gone in and we're able to find an adult host that's providing these youngsters with alcohol.
Thank you.
My question, thank you for your presentation. Along with that, within this research, the research and surveys were conducted with students at the high schools?
It was random, so we researched randomly in the community. So it was at various locations, such as outside of the high schools, the mall, Lancaster Boulevard. What we wanted to do is grab every third person, given their specific age group, and then give or survey them. We figured that if it was more random like that, it'd be more honest instead of going into a group setting like in the classroom and giving everybody a survey. We felt that the answers wouldn't have been as genuine as far as out there in the community.
The reason I ask is, as you were mentioning about, it's the social hosting. That's how they're primarily getting access to alcoholic beverages. One thing that may be of benefit, I mean, with or with not, I think this enforcement would be definitely beneficial. However, it's only beneficial if the parents and or adults are aware of it and aware of the consequences of hosting any sort of gathering at their home with students, friends that are underage. Because I think one of the things that many don't realize is that they may be hosting a casual event with, their son or daughter might say, I just want a few friends over, and it kind of escalates to more people. And then the owners of the home, parents, uncles, aunts, whoever it may be, do not realize the liability they're putting themselves into with having so many minors there and kind of not regulating so much because they're entrusting, let's say, their son or daughter, niece or nephew with that particular event. So I think the more aware the more awareness we can provide to the parental guidance in this type of situation, the more beneficial it will be, so to speak. Because I was curious, in this research, has anyone looked into how many noise ordinances have been violated with these parties and or social gatherings, and also during what time of year? Is there a peak, let's say in the spring when there's graduations or winter break or, the mid of summer, that sort of thing?
Just to touch on the first part of what you were stating, that's where we come in as a coalition. If we were to start pushing towards that policy to be pushed, we would bring awareness. That's one of the components that we have as a part of the coalition. We do have 3 different subcommittees, and one of them is community relation, and one of them is our marketing and new media relations. So we would spread the word that we will have a media campaign about this social host policy that we could be pursuing. Or we could just have the media campaign about how wrong social hosting is. So that would be one of the strategies that as a coalition that we do, bring awareness to the community. As far as the nuisance and abatement, I believe that's the policy that you're speaking on. I couldn't tell you directly around that, but one of the key the numbers on that, but one of the key informant interviews that we did was with a Lancaster sheriff, and he did state that parties are frequent, even and they're not in one central area. They're spread all around throughout the Antelope Valley and Lancaster. And since we were doing our surveys last year started in the summer, and he said right when school's about to get out, that's when parties are frequently. So right now is the time of the year. I think parties are going to be more frequent out here. One thing that was stated too, as far as parents not being in the home as well, but a lot of school, you have the truancy issue and students ditching school and going into the home. So we want to actually have an educational piece too with the parents about properly storing alcohol if they are not home as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that was my question too. What strategies do you have for the parties that are not hosted, but obviously I know the kids in my neighborhood, I don't think the parents are ever home when they're having their parties. And, I go over there, I call the sheriffs, and we do what we can, but, and then report to the parents the following days. But other than storing the alcohol, any other strategies for the parents? Do you actually having training on that?
We do have training on that as far as responsible beverage storage. We also train in, that's a whole nother aspect. So what we'll do is, conduct town hall meetings, parent support groups. We hope to, if there is a parent that's in violation and they do get charged with something, they can come to our facility, which is Charge Under Treatment Center, and we can provide them with a corrective type action so they can teach them prevention tools so it doesn't happen again.
In those Ventura County cities that have it, the same ordinance, are the parents or homeowners still liable even if they're not present? I mean, it's like if a kid finds a gun and it's not, stored properly. So if their alcohol's not stored properly and the kids all get drunk on that, are there ordinances applied to that?
I see what you're saying. We just kind of look towards if there was an adult that was present at the location. I'd have to look further into that. Maybe something we can talk about further, but I didn't find anything on that if the parents weren't there about the liability issues.
Okay.
Or an adult.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, the question I had was, have you seen most of these ordinances, or are they all the same? You said all 10 county.
Okay. Yeah, they're somewhat similar. They're really similar, where there's imposing civil penalties as far as fines. The fines vary. I believe Thousand Oaks has the stiffer penalty for it. Their first offense is a $2,500 fine. So I just think, I believe looking into those counties, the only thing that differs is the penalty phases. As far as, let's see. So as far as the penalty phases and the amount that's going to be imposed on that during that infraction, and the steps as well, first offense, second offense.
And to your knowledge, have these ordinances been challenged in the court system and upheld?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation today. I wonder if it'd be possible, though, could you provide a copy or two of the various ordinances that you have done research on for us to take a look at? That'd
Yes,
be great. And you can just send it to me, and that'd be great. And again, thank you for your time. And
All right. Now,
it's very
thank you,
pertinent.
guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Yes.
Our second presentation is the Antelope Valley Community Youth Court update.
Thank you, Chairman Vieira, Commissioners. Basically, what I wanted to do is not just give an update, but give a little overview about what the court is. Because frequently when our caseworkers reach out to the parents, they say, well, we weren't aware there was such a program. It's on the city webpage, and we have handouts and things like that we generally give folks, but this is an opportunity for us to kind of tout a good city program that gives some good results. First, I'd like to kind of introduce my partners in this endeavor. Anne-Marie Mercer. Anne-Marie, stand up here. Anne-Marie oversees the day-to-day activities of our caseworkers and interns. She handles case assignment, court liaison with outside agencies, and works on cases as needed. We also have Christine Ashley. Christina works for the LA Sheriff's Department, where she's a full-time civilian employee. She also volunteers in this capacity for the city. Over at the sheriff's station, when a juvenile citation comes in, she checks to see if there is any prior arrest of this juvenile, and if there isn't, then she refers the case over to the youth court to begin follow-up to see if the parents might be interested in participating. And finally, she does the jury training and the management of the juries during the youth court trial sessions. So it's a pretty big effort that she does, and she really gives the city a tremendous value for what we do. Thank you, ladies. As we look at the youth court structure, during 2008, on my second day of employment with the city council noted that law enforcement was asking for assistance in dealing with juveniles who were surfacing in some of their lower level crimes. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to try to find some way to divert these kids out of the system so that they didn't end up in the revolving door of the criminal justice system. Basically, law enforcement was trying to be proactive early by addressing the needs of the Antelope Valley youth who were exhibiting criminogenic behavior. Why a youth court? One of the things that we did when we got this project is we started looking at a variety of things around the country, particularly not just around the country, but also in the state of California. And we were finding that cities were spending an awful lot of money on this. I mean, it was not uncommon. I think Vallejo had an annual budget of about $1.5 million for a community service program that they ran, and they were running about a 60 to a 70% recidivism rate. So it really didn't make much sense to jump on that bandwagon. As we looked around, we found some real benefit in peer youth courts using a restorative justice philosophy. Those showed the strongest results in reducing youth crime and recidivism. And if we're going to go into this endeavor, one of the things we have to think about is recidivism. The whole idea is to keep these kids from reoffending and to keep them out of the criminal justice system so we don't have to spend tax dollars when they get to be adults to incarcerate them. The idea was to give low-level offending juveniles the opportunity to divert out of the criminal justice system so they wouldn't have any record of the incident. So what's restorative justice? Essentially, the primary goal of it is to repair the harm done by the crime, rebuilding the relationship between the juvenile and the community, and it's focused on processes that are personalized, collaborative, and inclusive. So that really makes the youth court concept go hand in hand with restorative justice. Within the scope of this, we're not a finding of fact court. The juvenile cannot come in and plead not guilty. We have had juveniles come in before, and after they've been screened and everything else, walk up to this podium and say, I'd like to plead not guilty. At that point, we start the proceeding. Case goes back to the traditional juvenile court, and that's where they have the opportunity to enter a plea of not guilty. If we're going to operate underneath the construct of restorative justice, the offender must accept or acknowledge the harm that they did, take responsibility, and make right the wrongs and address the causes of the behavior. And of course, these are all things that we try to do within the scope of the youth court, within the scope of our supervision. Our vision of this was to reduce juvenile criminal behaviors by taking action early, facilitating community involvement, providing education to both the youth volunteers and the offenders, and coupling mentors with young people to increase rehabilitation. The mentor issue has been kind of weak. Antelope Valley Partners for Health had a federal grant that they had a mentoring program going with. They lost the funding on that about 3 years ago, and so I've reached out to Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Los Angeles and have begun discussions with them about bringing their program up here. Antelope Valley's or Partners for Health says that they will give them space if they're interested in coming up here to actually for offices. And then we've also collaborated with some retired NCO or senior NCOs from Edwards Air Force Base to see if we can begin drawing from Edwards Air Force Base to get some of the actual Big Brothers and Big Sisters, or BIGs as they call them, involved in the program. What plan are we following? Well, we're following the National Youth Court Guidelines. The National Youth Court Guidelines were constructed and were used as a model to develop a city youth court diversion program. Key stakeholders were consulted during the development of this. Some of the stakeholders that we met with were mental health professionals, professionals from education, including some of Dr. Vieira's staff, community resource people, child advocacy professionals in the Antelope Valley, and finally research professionals from some of the local universities. The court started in 2010 when this particular slideshow was put together earlier this year. We had 270 cases accepted by the youth court. 60 of those cases were in screening or supervision at the time. 160 had successfully completed, or 60% of the cases that we took in. And of those cases, this was the number that I was talking about at the last Criminal Justice Commission. Of those cases, 87% of those kids have not reoffended yet. So those are kids that we've not had to spend any more money on as far as the criminal justice program is concerned, criminal justice. The court uses full-time attorneys as judges. Currently, judges that we use include Tapestry Commissioner Sue Dell, Ms. Genevieve Kamal of the Antelope Valley Domestic Violence Center, and Melissa Chayton of the Children's Law Center of Los Angeles County. We also use volunteers and clients as jurors. One of the interesting things about this is one of their sentences frequently is, or one of the conditions of their sentences, to participate in 2 or 3 jury services. We count that as community service. The great thing about this is it gives them an opportunity to see the criminal justice system not as a suspect, but as a good citizen. And it's interesting when you sit here and you watch the youth move from standing up here one court session to over there the next court session as a juror, and they become involved and realize they actually have somebody else's life in their hands. We also use Master of Social Work interns from California State University, Bakersfield, and Northridge for caseworkers. We also use City of Lancaster staff and volunteers for management and supervision of the youth court. How it works, the citations issued by the Sheriff's Department at the station, they review the citation for any previous record. If none, the case gets referred to us. The youth court caseworker reaches out to the parents to determine if the parent is interested in participating with their child. If yes, a screening is scheduled for the youth and their parent. If the screening suggests that the case is appropriate, then a court date is scheduled. The court process is, at court, the youth presents an overview of what happened to the jury, and in addition to their overview, they also identify 3 things that they're going to try to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The jury and judge ask clarification questions, so they open it up. They can ask questions of both the defendant and the parent to try to find out exactly what's going on in the family, because one of the things that we frequently see is the misconduct we're seeing in the part of the children is actually somehow related to the lack of parenting skills or supervision skills that the parents have. So even during the screening, we make the parents know or make them aware that part of their child's supervision may actually be the completion of some parenting course. The jury deliberates and develops sentencing recommendations. The recommendations are submitted to the judge, and then who then gives the youth and the parent the terms of their supervision based upon jury and caseworker feedback. The caseworker works with the family to complete the supervision. If the program is successfully completed, the youth and their family are invited to a quarterly completion ceremony. Some of you have actually participated in that completion ceremony, where the youth come up and they're given certificates from the city, and usually some representative from City Council or one of the commissions and the Sheriff's Department basically congratulate them and tell them what a good job they've done. In a nutshell, that's it. Questions?
I had one. How many hours is the whole program for each kid?
How many hours? Well,
They come, or days? Do they come in 2 hours?
Usually we have a 90-day supervision period. It used to be 60 days, but since the juvenile traffic court went away up here, we've kind of gotten a little bit more latitude with these. And so we're generally trying to structure it to 90 days. Sometimes a few of them bleed over and we give extensions to those, but generally speaking, most of them complete within 90 days.
Okay, great program. How many have completed so far now? I know last time you were here, it was just a handful.
Yeah, we've had, let me go back here, about 160 cases at the time this was put together have completed successfully. Obviously, we had 50 cases that failed or have been sent back for adjudication. One of the sad things about it is when we track those cases as well, that's almost a guarantee that there's going to be a second or subsequent citation, because that's the way it is.
And are you looking at recidivism? Are those cases included, or only the successful cases that you look at?
We're only looking at
recidivism rates?
recidivism of the successful cases, because we can't control those that don't succeed or don't complete.
So not of the referrals, but as of actual completion, so.
Right.
Okay.
I just had one quick question. You mentioned early on in your presentation that there was a slight problem with finding individuals to participate in this program. You've solicited, I mean, not solicited, but, there's, in the Lancaster mailings and so forth, it's kind of advertised in that way, but there still is a slight problem?
Well, the problem that we have is many of the parents that we reach out to, not only are they not aware of the program, but frequently when our caseworker reaches out to them, they don't even know their kid has had a citation. Mm-hmm. And so we get to actually break the news to them, well, your child has picked up a citation, and we have to do something about it now. And so once we get through that process with them, then we begin to, a lot of folks don't follow what goes on at City Hall. So when we get into that particular issue, a lot of these parents are not aware of the program. But again, that's why we bring in social work interns to get a chance to kind of break the news to them, say, look, this is what we've got. And they use some of their diagnostic processes during the screening process. We have an actual standardized instrument that we use during the screening process, and we take that the results from that standardized instrument, and we try to integrate that into the sentences.
Great. I think it's a fantastic program. Well done.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Informative, and kudos to you and your staff. Outstanding program, and positive impact on not only the students but the families as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Buer.
We do have one speaker card relative to this agenda item. Mr. Julius Jackson, is he present? Come to the podium.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is my first time speaking of anything, but my name is Julius. I'm a former offender, and it's crazy that I came here and he was talking about the youth, and I wanted to get involved in helping the youth like that because I've been wrongly accused or whatever as myself as a juvenile, so in another state, and it's following me here, and the laws in different states are getting misconstrued about an adjudication and whatever. So I just wanted to come up here and speak on the fact that I'm willing to help the youth because I'm a parent of 3 beautiful babies, and I want to do anything I can to help and put my voice out there to volunteer or do whatever. I don't know what else to
Well,
say.
thank you. We appreciate that. I think the 2 presentations that you've heard this morning specifically are looking for those that would be willing and available to mentor. So
Right.
we appreciate your coming forward and reflecting your availability to do so. And I would encourage you to speak with any of these gentlemen that are here today with regards to that.
Thank you very much, and thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to consent calendar. Commissioner, did you get a chance to take a look at the minutes? And if so, may I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Any discussion, comments, questions?
You have a second, I don't think yet.
If I get a second with that,
I
too.
second.
Thank you. Hearing none, I call for the vote. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to commission staff presentations, updates, reports, monthly crime stats. Mr. Cobalt, is that you?
Thank you, Chairman Vera. Just as a follow-up to the discussion about the youth court, I was just reminded if anybody has any children that are between the ages of 12 and 17 that are interested in becoming jurors, we have a juror training today at 3:30 in council chambers here. It's a great opportunity for children who need to also get credit for community service and those kinds of things for school. The measurement dates for this report is from June 2nd to June 29th. These numbers are available on the web, on our website for this, so I won't spend a lot of time on them. Basically, we're in when we look at Part 1 crime totals across this line, you can see that we're in a pretty good spot right now as far as Part 1 crimes go. Our arrests are running pretty much consistent with other reports. Excuse me. When we take a look at the report that I gave to you on in June of 2013, we were averaging 71.8 Part 1 crimes with a median of 72. That's declined during this measurement period to 66.75 for our weekly average, and our weekly median is 68. These are the past year in Part 1 crimes. When we compare June 2012 to June 2013, we're down 7%. Crime rate per 10,000, July 2012 to the end of June 2013 is 267.92, which is down 4% from our 2012 crime rate. We take a look at our most active reporting districts for Part 1 crimes. We can see 1135 and 1137 are running neck and neck at 33. 1127 had 32. 1126 had 31. 1122 had 24, and 1132 had 21. Just to show you how that lays out on the map. Again, 1135 runs basically from H down to J, from Challenger Way over to 30th Street East. You can see our density down here is in pretty much the same area that it is in most of our other reports. 1137 is the density is the mirror of 1135. Basically, we're looking at from Avenue J down to Avenue L, from Challenger Way over to 40th Street East. But our highest density, again, this reporting period is from Challenger Way over to about 20th Street East, from Avenue J down to Avenue K. For 1127, our highest density area is along Valley Central Way from basically Lancaster Boulevard down to Avenue J, and then we pick up several more down in the apartment complexes that are directly south of there. For 1126, this is one of our areas that we're going to focus on with our business improvement group. But you can see our highest density still lies around that area, both in the businesses and parking lots on the southwest corner of Avenue K and 10th Street West, and then the density extends on over to the apartments over on Gadsden. For 1122, this is our Lancaster Boulevard area, and going up to Avenue I from 10th Street West over to Sierra Highway. And you can see in there the highest density is focused within a couple of block radius of Lancaster Boulevard. And this is our last area, 1132, which runs basically from Sierra Highway over to Challenger Way, I down to Avenue J. And you can see the density kind of bleeds over between Antelope Valley High School along Lancaster Boulevard and the areas directly north and south of that. Everything over east of the high school, or basically about 5th Street East, is pretty decentralized over there. Take a look at residence burglaries. 1127 and 1137 both had 10. 1192 had 3. Everything else had 2 or less. Larcenies involving vehicles. 1137 had 11. 1135 had 5. 1124 had 4, and everything else had 3 or less. So we take a look at the 52-week trends. As you look at the graph, the most recent week is on the right side of the graph as you look at it. The oldest week is on the left side of the graph, and you can see we do have a slight upward trend in assaults. However, we are below our baseline for the assaults. You can see our baseline for assaults is we're just a little over 15 on average per week, and you can see our highest threshold for any given week in the last 52 weeks has been 14. So we're not at our baseline. For larceny, I debated as to whether to show this as trending up or flat, but there is a slight incline there, so I included that. But basically, larceny is kind of tracking flat on us right now. And also, this is assault. Trending flat is rape. The trend line is slightly above the baseline, but our baseline is 1.07, and the weeks that don't show up here, no occurrences happened, so this is just based upon the weeks where something was reported. For homicide, we've got a downward trend in homicide. We also have a downward trend in robbery, and the majority of our weeks are still staying below the baseline. And for burglary, we also have a downward trend. And for grand theft auto, we've got a really pronounced downward trend. It's amazing when you take a look at that. Going back to week 7 of this year, we didn't really have anything over 7 or 8 stolen autos up until the most recent week of week 26. This is how the Part 1 crimes laid out across the city by reporting district. We had 267 that are included in this data set. And you can see most of the reporting districts that we talked about identified in the red. This is our spatial trend analysis. This shows specifically in the city where Part 1 crimes went up and where Part 1 crimes went down. The pinkish areas where it went up and the green areas where it went down. This is our repeat call locations for the city. Probably the only real newcomer on here was the Lancaster General Relief Office down at 337 East Avenue, K10. And that was an alarm problem down there, and I think they've got it rectified now. This is the layout of repeat calls for service around the city. Just shows spatially where the data was at. And then this is our forecast for July of 2013 by reporting district. We're forecasting 351 Part 1 crimes in the city during that time. When we compare this to our June forecast to June actuals, we forecasted 381. We had 339 actual, for a forecast accuracy of 89%. And that's pretty much the report.
Comments, questions?
Just a comment. Good data as always. Thank you. A couple of years ago, I guess when I started in this, we used to get a ream of paper of all of the maps, Jim, and all that. and I think it's a really good idea that we don't get that anymore. However, I have a hard time reading the repeat calls, list, and locations, and I'm wondering if it would be possible in the future to get a hard copy of those for the presentation.
Sure. They're also available on the city website, both in this report, and we also have a place on the city website where we post them weekly, so you always get the previous 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and I use that as reference when I go back and look at the maps. But sometimes I found it useful to discuss the repeat calls here, and if I haven't had the opportunity to do that, then we can talk about why it is that a particular location is popping up all of a sudden when it wasn't there before.
Okay, do you want just the sheet, or do you want the sheet and the map?
Just the sheet.
Okay.
For me, I mean.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you.
For all commissioners. Okay. All right, thank you. We'll move on to arrest stats, LA County Sheriff's Department, Deputy Ruiz.
Good morning, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen. We're also pleased to show that in comparison from May to June, we also have a drop in trend and activity of our specialized units of the numbers that they've reported as far as arrests. Next slide, please, Jim. Thank you. Our top and core team for Part 1 crimes, they have 4 arrests with warrants, and Part 2 crimes, 125. And parolees of those total 129 or 20. So there's pretty good percentage in there. Doing my math, somewhere around 15% is what we're looking at for the top team. They're very significant of what they've done productively. A specific event that they were very involved in. Also, they partaked and helped out with one of shutting down the raves. Very useful on that from last month. They put together an operation that targeted panhandlers and loiterers on the 27th of June, and with that they had 21 arrests. 2 of those were felonies and 19 were misdemeanors. So they've been very proactive with some of the nuisance incidents that are happening within the city of Lancaster. Burglary suppression team, they had 12 felony arrests. Of those 12, 2 of those were parolees. They did do 1 search warrant. Warrant arrests were 18. Ramey warrants of identified suspects as 10. They recovered almost $9,000 worth of stolen property, and that's also significant of that amount of money that was recovered. Last month, the month of June, they were very much aided by the pawn shops. The pawn shops in the communities have been very helpful with helping solve burglaries. There was a downward trend earlier in the spring where there wasn't a lot of stolen property that was pawned off in the local pawn shops. Last month specifically, they have 5 specific incidences where they were able to effect arrests based on the help from the local pawn shop businesses out here. So for a long time, we've always had a real good working relationship with a lot of pawn shops, but we're pleased to see that maybe the criminal element either forgotten or for whatever reasons, they've gone back to trying to sell stolen property in there, and we've been able to successfully complete investigations with the help from the pawn shop owners. The LANCAP team also were productive with 36 felony arrests, 13 misdemeanor arrests. No firearms were recovered. Also, the burglary team also, and that previous slide had no firearms recovered. Parolees arrested were 2. And then the amount of illegal narcotics that were recovered are also around $4,000. And that's also significant as far as an event on the 20th that the LANCAP team conducted a surveillance of an apartment building where they suspected that narcotics were being illegally sold out of an apartment building. And based off their surveillance, they did make an arrest of 3 individuals, and some rock cocaine was discovered inside that apartment complex of that specific location they were looking for, amongst other surveillances that they've done. And then our narcotics team, the patrol handles about 103 felony arrests. The crew had 5 methamphetamine, pretty significant amount of 3,718.5 grams compared to 2,200 from the crew. Marijuana, was also pretty high as far as for the month of June for the patrol units. And then they did conduct 5 search warrants. That's what our narcotics team did, and they were able to recover 4 firearms based off all those. But overall, there was some drops in crime, or I'm sorry, drops in arrests compared to previous months. So that goes consistent with some of the trends that we've had also shown before us. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from the California Highway Patrol, Commander Gretchen Jacobs.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did everyone enjoy their 4th of July holiday?
Absolutely.
I was in the Acton parade, and I want you to know I was savagely attacked by water balloons during that parade, so I'm not sure about next year's parade. So I want to start off with the 4th of July statistics for our maximum enforcement period. For LA County, unfortunately, we had 4 people lose their lives, but in Antelope Valley, there were none, so that's positive for us. We had 336 arrests for LA County, and we had 18 in the Antelope Valley. Statewide, we had 1,559 arrests, which is up from last year from 479, so quite a significant boost. For our June statistics, we had 1 fatal for last month. We had 10 DUI TCs. We had 45 DUI arrests. We issued 1,362 citations, and we had 536 motorist services. I'm sure that you've heard about our Start Smart classes. I think the PIO was here talking to you about that before. So we've had overwhelming response to that, to the point where we've had extra classes for this month. So we have one that's going to be on the 23rd at 6 p.m. at our office, which is at 2041 West Avenue I. The telephone number to sign up for that class is 661-948-8541. And this is for teens that are about to drive and their parents. So we have room for about 40 people total, so 1 student and 1 parent, but we can always squeeze another one in if we have 2 parents. But I highly suggest people call and get a spot while they're still available, because it's been very, very popular. And that's it, unless you have some questions.
No, but it's good to hear that you have 1 more class and that there's an interest in more teens and parents being involved in that Start Smart. So.
Yes, and then hopefully we'll be able to have at least a couple for August as well.
Very good.
You mentioned the phone number and the contact for that class. Is there a website or something that you might mention where people could get more information if they're interested if they're looking at that program?
We've just switched over to a new computer system, so I'm not sure that that's up and running at the moment. I will find out for you, though. You can certainly call my public information officer, Officer Hernandez, who can provide you with that. I know we do have some pamphlets at the office, and if you want, I can bring some for the next class, but I'm not quite sure that the website's up in Sacramento yet. I'll check.
There are a lot of people that end up watching this broadcast on television or later on looking at the video on the city's website, so if they do that, they'll be able to hear what you said as well. But it's always good to, if you have a website, to
I'll look into that and see what we have regarding that.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, just make mention of one of the things that you mentioned, the 4th of July. Well, a couple of comments. One is I think it's great to have the opportunity to throw a water balloon at CHP and not be arrested. So
from your perspective.
So I would encourage that. But here in the city of Lancaster as well, we had a 4th of July celebration and Independence Day celebration in combination with the professional bull riders. And it was a collaborative effort with the city of Lancaster, the Antelope Valley Fair, and the Showdown Rodeo Committee. It was a very successful event. And it has been now for several years. It is the only major fireworks show in the Antelope Valley, and certainly the only one that's free. So I want to commend the city of Lancaster for doing that, number one, but I mention it at this point because one of our largest issues last year was, given the popularity of that event, we had major traffic gridlock at the end of it with so many people that went out not only to the fairgrounds to participate, but also in the surrounding areas in the deserts, because you can see the fireworks from a long ways away. Great time by everyone until it was time to go home. And so there was a preparation for this year, a traffic study that was conducted by the City of Lancaster, and they developed a traffic disbursement plan. And it was implemented this year with the assistance of our Sheriff's Department and California Highway Patrol. And I was there and witnessed it, and I just want to let you know that you guys did a great job. It really, really helped disperse traffic throughout the valley, and we really appreciate that because it detracts from the event when people go out there and have a really wonderful time, and then it takes them literally hours to get home. And you're still talking about a half an hour or so wait sometimes in some places to get out, but that's a significant improvement, and we're hoping to even be able to build on that success as well. And I know that our deputy here, Jason Cottle, was involved in that, and we have Mark Bozian as well, city manager. So. And then I also be remiss if I didn't mention that we have a celebrity in our audience today with Jake Nelson. It was from Jake Nelson and the Tone Wranglers, and I think there's some sort of a relationship here with our sheriff's captain. And Jake has come out, and he's been a big fan of rodeo and city events now for a long time. Started with Showdown Rodeo when he was a little cowboy, and has kind of grown up with all of us, and it's been great to watch. But he also was brought in to sing for a couple hours beforehand, a couple hours afterwards, but ended up being drug into halftime shows and other parts of that event, and did so willingly with all of his people. And at the end of the night, when some people didn't want to jump in their cars and brave the traffic, he basically stayed until the crowd said, okay, we've had enough, or they turned off your electricity, one or the other. So thanks for being here, thanks for all you do, and thank you to the CHP and also the sheriffs for great implementation of a well-thought-out plan.
You're quite welcome.
You know, Commander, I know that in our last meeting, you also spoke to the recruitment efforts on the part of CHP. Any update or any further information you'd like to share along those lines, or?
We don't have a date set right now for the application, the online application process. I'm going to assume it's going to be the first part of September. I'm hoping that they give us an update relatively quickly because we have a recruitment seminar scheduled for the AV College, which is in the middle of September. So we certainly don't want to have the application there and gone by the time we get to talk to some people about recruitment efforts. So I'm hoping that Sacramento will come out with a date soon, and if so, maybe we can bump up our recruitment effort at the college to a date that's different from what we have right now.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. We have from the District Attorney update, Head Deputy DA John Morris.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and I'm also glad to know that I won't be in any parades in Acton from now on. I reviewed the filing statistics on felonies year-to-date and also to see if there were any trends. And what I found for year-to-date, there was just over a 4% increase in the number of felonies that we have filed up through June 30th. That's the bad news, but the good news is that consistent with the prior presentations and Mr. Cobalt's statistics, we've had a decrease over the last 3 months, beginning on April 1st through June 30th. And that's in comparison to 2012 statistics. So for that time frame, in 2012 we had 482 felony filings. For the same time frame this year, we had 425, which means we have 57 fewer felony cases filed, which is good news. That is an 11.8% decrease over that time frame. As with all statistics, there are a variety of factors that come into play. Most important are the number of crimes reported, according to Mr. Cobalt, decreased during that time frame. Additionally, our numbers are dependent upon the number of cases presented because not every crime reported is going to be solved by law enforcement. And finally, the district attorney decision becomes paramount in determining whether or not there's sufficient evidence of the crime and sufficient evidence of the defendant being the person who committed it. But overall, it's good news, and we did have an 11.8% decrease during that time frame.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from Commission?
I just have one. How is it impacting the valley here with the closures of all the courts and the juvenile courts? And
fortunately, we don't have an impact here in the Antelope Valley. For the courts that were closed, they're all in areas outside of our district, and we're not getting any additional reporting districts that now have to file in the Antelope Valley. So no effect so far.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, there's nothing from item number 5, Business Watch Subcommittee. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Public Business from the floor, non-agendized items. And we do have 2 speaker cards, and we'll start with Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. I came last night to talk about a meeting in Palmdale I went to on Monday where they discussed the spice and the bath salts problem, and I wanted to follow up a little bit with that today. But first, Jim, your statistics are still a little dry, but you are a secret weapon. The youth court is the only way to impact people's lives and get them to change their own behavior. That's the success. And we always have this problem because people want a mood alter. They want to party. They want to get high. I would much prefer they go off into the desert and pray or study math, but that's not going to happen. And then there are varying degrees of harm because I certainly survived my youth, but there wasn't these things available that there are today, and there doesn't seem to be a consensus on how to party responsibly anymore. So that's what I like to focus on. But I get it with the kids. I had the honor. I don't know how many other civilians have rode with the party car, but I did, and the meeting was funny because the first thing I did when I got in there was I sat next to Captain Ford and I asked him, will this be presented, this hour-and-a-half program, to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission? And he just shrugged his head. He didn't know. So I hope they bring this, but what I took out of this all was that the most successful tool in dealing with this is to get parents and consumers to go to these stores that sell these things. And the main thing I don't want is us to be just totally unaware. And I know most people in this room are not totally unaware, but it's just one more problem, one more front in this war on drugs, the war on authority, all these things that are natural consequences of growing up and the consequence of other things that we've done. So, but I think I just want to share one victory I had at that meeting, because I spoke about the fact that I would much rather have a young person smoke marijuana than smoke spice. And I had Xavier Flores stand up. You all know him from LULAC and fighting tobacco and alcohol, and say that he reluctantly had to agree. So I took that as a promising sign. We have to start prioritizing where we put our efforts, and demonizing the need to party is not the way. We have to promote the responsible way to party and show what joy can come from that. So that's my focus, and that's what I'll continue to do. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. And our second is Ms. Michelle Egberts.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, and staff. When we talk about compliance, we talk about barriers and when it comes to former offenders. And compliance is good. We want to make sure that we stay in compliance of the law, and that includes businesses. I provided each of you a very short and condensed version of the EEOC's guidelines from April 12th of last year in regards to arrests and convictions. Unfortunately, I have found in the Antelope Valley, working with my clients, that there has been some failures along the way with 8 different agencies that are responsible for getting the arrests off the records that do not lead to convictions, such as the Sheriff's Department, the district attorneys. We do have petitions that we can file for them through the Sheriff's Department, which goes to the DA's office, to get those arrests off. There is a 2-year guideline, two-year time frame from the time of the arrest. However, we have found that we can go around that because of the fact that these have not been done here for quite so many years, probably about 12 years. About 10 months ago, I came before you and the mayor. I am slowly but surely removing barriers. I think one barrier that I removed was the residency and presence restrictions ordinance with the city of Lancaster and Palmdale. Unfortunately, that led into a lawsuit with Lancaster. I want to prevent lawsuits. I'm not here to sue. I'm here to work with you. I'm here to help you. I appreciate the Vice Mayor going to meet with me on some legislation that's going into place, or that's going through the motions, how our city can get into compliance with the new EOC rules. Beverly Glode and I spoke last year. She did make some changes to the City of Lancaster's application, but I need these guys to be employed. They are employable, these men and women that have felony convictions. If the felony conviction is not related to the job, it should be looked over. I gave you a very good cheat sheet. Please spread the word, because if these individuals are being denied employment based on their felonies, those companies will be sued. If those companies are not in compliance with EEOC, we can work with them and get them in compliance. So, I'm here to help you help us. We can reduce the unemployment rate greatly by getting these individuals employed and to pay their victims back. Any questions?
No, thank you very much. In closing, any comments from commissioners?
I do have one. And I don't know how we do this. I guess we have to make it an agenda item in the future. But I would like to look at the Lancaster ordinance for illegal fireworks. I did go to the city presentation, but when I got home, my neighborhood rivaled the city presentation with noise and height and bursts. And I looked at the newspaper showed that I think Palmdale had 33 citations, Lancaster had 0 citations for illegal fireworks. And just doing the math, I mean, it was an $80,000 night for Palmdale. But I'd really rather reduce the sticks and the mortars that are in my backyard the next day in possible fires versus the income generating. But I think we need to take a serious look at that ordinance and find out why theirs works and why ours is. My neighbors were cited 2 years ago, and they were out there bigger and better this year.
Then what we can do, if we can put that on the agenda at our next meeting for discussion.
Thank you.
Two things. In reading the paper this morning, I first want to commend Vice Mayor for writing a very responsible, well-written letter, and the letter to the editors. I thought he represented the city of Lancaster very well. And the second thing, and I'll say this to say something else. Front page, reading a story about a person that's been arrested in 72, out arrested in 79, out arrested in 92, or 82, out and arrested in 90, and now they want to release this person back into L.A. County. Well, it's very alarming when you read things like that, and yet we can't protect an 8-year-old boy, Gabriel. And so I say that to say this to our district attorney folks, our CHP, and our L.A. County sheriffs. I don't know how you do your job, but keep doing it, because you do have people that will support you and try to get this right, because there's a part of our system that's just not working, and we do appreciate the efforts of all of you. Thank you, David.
Appreciate your comments. Any other comments in closing? Hearing none, this meeting stands adjourned, and our next meeting will be on Wednesday, the 14th of August at 10 a.m. Thank you for attending.